Los Angeles County, Philip Dube. And Philip, I can make a very long list of how these state's witnesses, particularly the police officers, actually ended up helping the defense. One of the ways that came out on this officer's testimony was about the knowledge of a weapons warrant. The idea that Daunte Wright did, in fact, have a weapons warrant out for himself. And so the idea being that just the fact that he had been involved with weapons suggests that he could still be involved with weapons. It causes a heightened sense of scrutiny. I would imagine that that, again, is just very helpful to the defense.
Of course it is, because, again, a lot of the movements that are out there are trying to portray, no disrespect, Daunte Wright as a Vienna choir boy. They're trying to make him out to be this angelic, unarmed black kid who did not deserve to lose his life. And yes, he did not deserve to lose his life, but the jury's going to have to decide whether or not he set most of this in motion that ultimately led to his death. The circumstances leading up to it were certainly far from innocent. You have a guy driving around on bad tags. Obviously, that's petty. But then you find out he's got a warrant. And then you find out that it's weapons related. Now he's putting up a struggle. He's trying to get back in the car. And who knows what's in that car when he's wanted on a weapons charge. And now he's speeding off. Later on, he wipes out. Other people are injured. I think the issue for this jury is going to be whether or not Officer Potter responded appropriately with or without a taser. Do you just stand down, or do you serve and protect as an officer trying to apprehend somebody who's wanted on a warrant?
Or do you wait a little bit longer, right? At the end of the day, both officers had eyes on the guy. She was behind Officer Lucky. You had Officer Johnson on one side of the car. You had Officer Lucky on the other side of the car, both looking at the defendant. Both could see his hands. No one's yelling weapon, weapon, weapon. And again, it looked like at some point they would be able to overpower him. He wasn't a very big kid, obviously. So I think that may be where the question is, that did she at that point have to raise the level? He wasn't yet driving away. One thing that was helpful to the state, Officer Johnson or Sergeant Johnson testified that he had actually turned the key off and he had not yet gotten to turn it back on to start driving off prior to the taser being introduced. So if you start looking at it that way, again, resisting arrest, all these things, the things in his past, those are not positives. But again, people will argue being stopped and trying to resist arrest in the way he did under those circumstances should not end in a death sentence.
No, I agree with you 100%. No, the young man should not have died. And if we got to keep our eye on the ball here, this goes to what was going through Officer Potter's head at the time. She truly thought that she was going to stun him with a taser to get him to submit to the executive authority that was trying to take him in on the warrant. And of course, it's for the jury to decide whether or not, in conscious disregard of human life, she recklessly handled that taser in lieu, or that gun in lieu of her taser. And we'll see what happens. But yes, he was very abruptly, very quickly, trying to resist their authority and trying to get away. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier before the break. Are you just supposed to let people get away and stand down out of fear that you might have to use a little bit of force to bring somebody in? Or do you, in fact, serve and protect and utilize all the powers of arrest that the law confers upon you as an officer? And that's apparently what Officer Potter thought she was doing. And she thought she was using the least amount of force with her taser, and unfortunately, it was her service revolver.
Now, again, it's still early in the state's case, Philip, but I would say right now it's not going so great. As I mentioned, I could make a long list of how their witnesses have helped the defense so far. I've said from the beginning that this case is going to come down to expert testimony. Do you think, and clearly they will bring in experts who are going to testify that what you're seeing on that tape is not along with police policy. Do you think that that will be enough to overcome some of the hurdles that have been created by their own witnesses?
Oh, I think it's already been overcome. When the jury saw her break down on the curb there, she showed more than a modicum of humanity and compassion for the loss of the life of a young man. It looked like she truly was despondent herself, not over her job, but she was wondering, oh my God, did I just end a young life? What have I done here? She had a hard time living with herself in that moment in time. And I think jurors are sympathetic to people who truly have a conscience and who think that they're doing the right thing at the time. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, as powerful as all the video in this case has been, that video of her breaking down and her response to this thing, I think is going to have a lasting effect on this jury. It's going to be very difficult for them to convict unless something really jumps out at them and says everything she did or what she did was absolutely wrong. All right, Philip, stand by. We're going to take a break. When we